Hello, my name is André Laurence, and welcome to the Not EV-olution Show, the channel that has absolutely nothing to do with electric cars, but where I make videos about things that I find interesting and make me happy. And if you're wondering why I call it the Not EV-olution Show, it's very simple. For the last year and a half, I've had a channel and continue to make videos on a channel called EV-olution. I'll put a link to that up here. It's a channel where I talk about electric cars and help people learn about how to charge them and accessories and what they're like to drive. But that's not what this is about. I decided to reactivate my personal account because a month and a half ago I ordered these from Ukraine, and I'm really looking forward to unboxing them and installing them. Well, if you want to know what these are and where I'm going to install them, well, it's going to be somewhere back there. Stick around, I'll let you know in 2 seconds. If you've been following me on my other channel, then you'll have seen this work area behind me a few times, and you'll have noticed it's changed over the time that I've made my videos, where it went from a blank wall to then having a poster, and then that disappeared. And then when I went on my wedding anniversary trip, I bought the piece of art that's on the wall over my monitors. Now, I'll put some images of that stuff here while I'm speaking, and I'll give you a little close-up of that piece of art because it's actually quite beautiful by a local artist here in the province of Quebec. Now, since then, I've wanted to put something on the two sides, and I came across something on Etsy that really caught my eye. And there's a company or a guy in the Ukraine who has a store called Forged Commodities. Now, if you've seen any of the things that this guy makes, he's an artist. It's just pure art. It's beautiful. There's no words to describe what he makes. I'll show you what they are. I'll do a little unboxing and I'll speed this up as I pull off the wrapping and all that other crap. And you're gonna see they're astounding. So let's get to it. Okay, before I unwrap these, I'll give you a couple seconds to guess what you might think these are. Let me show that to you here. I've got two of them, they're both identical. Let's unwrap one. Okay, the packaging is ridiculous. This thing is wrapped in like 4 million layers of plastic and everything, but at least I have a good chance of them not having been damaged in the transport from Ukraine to Canada. Let me continue. Wow. There you have it. I bought a pair of hand-forged, handcrafted wall sconces that do have a bulb socket. Let me show that to you here. They are fantastic. Now there is an electrical wire here that's in here. I'm going to be sticking the wire back in there because I bought some LED battery powered fire kind of flicker things that I'm going to stick in there. They actually fit into this. Now I bought a pair of these because I'm going to put one on each side of the piece of art that I have back there. Let me open up the second one. These are beautiful. Each piece is handmade. The metal is handcrafted. This man does incredible work. They are really, really fantastic. They look authentic and they're real. This is real wood and real steel or some kind of metal iron, whatever it is. But the paint, the varnish, the finish is incredible. And they've got this sort of an angle. So when it's on the wall, they're leaning forward a little bit and it looks like you can actually lift it off. Now, one of each, one for each side. And the reason I chose medieval theme is because, well, I'm a bit of a geek. I love Dungeons and Dragons. I've been playing for decades. And I thought these would look really cool on my wall. So the man that makes these is Andrey in Ukraine. His company is called Forged Commodities. And I strongly suggest you go have a look at his Etsy page, because he makes more than just this. I mean, he also makes weapons, he makes mailboxes, he makes furniture, he makes, you name it, this guy can make it. And they are really beautiful. So now I'm going to set this aside and install them on the wall and show you what they look like with a light on them. In order to install these on the wall is actually quite simple. On the bracket that goes against the wall, there are 3 holes, and the artist actually includes the hardware that's required. Now, usually in a gyprock wall, you would use these little plastic inserts. After you drill a little hole, tap them in, screw in the bolt that goes into it, and it expands the tip, and then that retains it on the wall. Then you've got this little nut that he includes, and it's actually quite nice. Let me show this to you up on this other camera here. Now, right here, it's been hand painted to match the finish of the bracket of the lamp that goes on the wall. So once it's installed, it won't show. Now, the problem that I have in this house is that the previous owners decided to finish the basement with some sort of fiberboard material, wooden fiberboard, whatever it is, I'm not quite sure. So drilling and using a gyprock retention thing like this is absolutely useless. So I've opted to drill some holes, and I'm going to use some 10 by 1 screws that I have in my shop, and I'll just be drilling the holes in the appropriate location on the wall to be able to hold them up. Now, what about this wire that's sticking out the back? Now, usually you would have electricity coming down to the location where you're going to install it, and then wire it up to a switch, and that would be the end of it. Here in the province of Quebec, that requires an electrician, and I actually purchased something before actually even getting these, because the idea has been kicking around in my head for quite some time. The little LED lights that flicker like fire that sit inside this spot, and it's going to look fantastic. So I don't actually need this. To get around the fact that this is hanging in the way of being flush against the wall, I'll be drilling a hole to allow the wire to pass through, and it'll just be dangling in the wall, disconnected, not connected to anything, and it's not a danger because there's no live electricity back there. Now, since I've measured out my first hole at 50.5 centimeters, the next thing that I need to do is to drill the hole in the center that'll allow me to get this pigtail into the wall and not mess things up. Now, the easiest way to do that is to measure the distance from the center of the first hole to the center of the bracket, which is where the hole is for this wire, and then measure from the center of the drill hole here to the center of where the wire is. So having pre-drawn this hole, all I have to do is measure 3 centimeters from the center of the hole to 4 centimeters down, and that little mark there is where I'll be drilling. Now, because the wire is actually a little bit bigger than this bit, I'm going to be making the hole a little bit wider by pressing up and down while the bit's spinning. All right, let's test to see if the wire fits in the hole. Alright, well, now that I've got the hole in the wall and I can put the bracket flush up against it, I've got my first hole marked out with a pencil. I'm going to line this up vertically to make sure that it's not crooked, and then I'll mark the other hole with my pencil, and I'll be able to start drilling for the screws there. Okay, that should do it. Now, there is a hole in the bottom. The problem with the bottom hole is that the wood is preventing me from getting this pencil tip into this hole to mark it precisely. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the pencil and make a mark in the center as opposed to putting a circle around there. Now, because this is fiberboard and these are 10x1 screws, just screwing them straight in without pre-drilling would be a pain in the butt, and I don't want to take a chance of removing too much material by this trying to self-tap. So I'm using a 5/32 bit just to pre-drill some very tiny holes to allow this to get some bite and get into the wood. Now that the holes are pre-drilled, I'll put this into its position. So my pilot holes are lined up fairly well. I've opted to go with a very long screwdriver and get those screws into place. Now before I go and snug that down, the wire and the screw that's in there will hold it in place. I'll try and line up the second top screw, and I'm just going to move over to the other side because I'm right-handed, it's easier. Now at this point you're probably wondering, okay, well that's all fine and dandy for the top holes, but what about this bottom one? There's no way that screwdriver fits into this little space. Well, the solution is simple. Sort of. Screw with a bit that goes into my drill, and I'll position that right here. And start it by hand. Now, once the screw has got some bite into it, that's where the key comes in. And that was the long process of turning it in by hand while I push on the bit that's there. So let me speed this up while I do that. Of course, I dropped the tool. All right, let's try that again. There it is, torch number 1. Now, since I've done this before on the other side, I pre-drilled and I wanted to figure out how to explain this properly, I'm just going to point that camera over there and do the installation with the 3 screws the same way, sped up. Okay, so here we go. And that's it. Now, let me show you what these look like and show you what I use to light them up. Now, just before I give you some close-up shots of what they look like finally installed with the lights in them, I wanted to let you know what I'm using for lights. Now, these are actually little LED fire candle thingies. They're narrow on one side, thick on another, and they've got 2 AAA batteries, and they light up like fire and flicker. So there's this little button on the back, and when they light up, they do this little fire dancing thing and give a pretty decent effect, actually. When they're installed, it's even better. I'm not sure if you can tell. I'm looking at the monitor here and I can see that you can't get the full detail of what they look like, but they actually do look quite convincing, although not terribly bright. These are, however, the original batteries that came with them. I'll be changing those out eventually. Now, that little button left them on for a short amount of time. That's the demo mode, but the on-off button on the bottom lets me leave them on for hours. So now let me install them in there and show you what they look like with some lighting and without. Now, just before I get up close and show you what they look like with a little bit more lighting so you can see what the wood and metal look like once they're mounted on the wall, I wanted to show you the effect that the flame gives from those little LED lights. It's actually pretty convincing and looks pretty good. and I'm quite happy with it. So now let me show you what they look like up close. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I really make these for myself. This channel is just to have some fun, but I hope you enjoy what I show you. I really love these lights, and if you're looking for some medieval or forged things, Etsy, Forged Commodities is an amazing place to look. Andrey has great communication. If you have any questions, he'll answer them, and he's got a ton of things that he can sell you. So I'll suggest checking out his website. I'll put a link in the description below. These wall sconces are fantastic and a great addition, in my opinion, to my office. So if you want to encourage him, go check out his website. If you have any questions about how I installed these or what the construction is like, any dimension questions, or just any question in general, please put it in the comment section below. If you like this video, please consider clicking the thumbs up. It shows me that I'm making something that at least one person likes. And if you really enjoy this, then please consider subscribing to this personal channel. There's the subscribe button right there. And thanks for watching. Changed a little bit. It's gone from being completely blank to having a poster and then having a couple other things. And my timer just rang, and now I've got to go check on the fish before it burns. Oops. In order to install these on the walls, In order to install these on the wall, the creator of this device, oh man, it's not an electric car, André. In order to install these on a wall, the artist, just say the artist. And the artist actually includes these sort of, nice. The first thing I needed to decide when I chose this location was the height versus the fixture. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this channel is really for me to have some fun, and I really hope you enjoy the things that I show here, and if you don't, sorry, I'm just having a good time making these things for myself. Now, crap.